It is January 1945, Königsberg, a city made of stone and old war. A German soldier stands in a cold corridor. He holds a lantern. He is looking at something he does not fully understand. Panels of amber, floor to ceiling, glowing faintly in the thin light. Shades of gold and burnt honey. He has been ordered to crate them, all of them. He does not know what they are worth. He does not know what they mean. He just knows his orders, and he knows the Russians are coming. He picks up his hammer. That is the last confirmed moment anyone can place the amber room. Everything after that is silence. Decades of silence, broken by rumor, by deathbed confession, by divers descending into freezing black water 300 feet below the Baltic Sea. It has been called the eighth wonder of the world. It is the most valuable object ever stolen. It is still missing, and tonight we follow it, as far as the trail allows. Before it becomes a legend, it is a living forest. We must go back, far back, 44 million years, the Eocene epoch. A vast forest covers the land we now call the Baltic coast of northern Europe. Ancient conifers reach toward a hot Eocene sun. Their bark splits in the heat. Thick golden resin bleeds from the wood. It flows slow, it flows heavy, it traps dust, it traps seeds. It traps the legs of small insects who will be suspended, perfectly preserved, for tens of millions of years. Then the climate turns, the seas rise. The forests are swallowed by the earth. Millions of years of pressure harden the resin, transform it. It becomes something that is no longer wood, no longer liquid. It becomes amber. The sea pushes it ashore on cold Baltic beaches. For thousands of years, men pull it from the sand. They carve it, they trade it, they worship it. The ancient Romans called Baltic amber the tears of the gods. The Germans called it Bernstein, burning stone. It is the only gemstone that was ever alive. In the year 1701, a king has an idea. Frederick I of Prussia is a man who understands the language of power. And power he understands must be made visible. He commissions a room, not decorated with amber, covered entirely in it. Floor to ceiling, wall to wall, he hires the German baroque sculptor Andreas Schlüter to design it. The king does not want a chamber, he wants a statement. The craftsmen who answer this commission are the finest in Europe. Gottfried Wolfram, Ernst Schacht, Gottfried Thurau. They come to the workshop at the Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin, and they face an immediate problem. Amber is not stone, it is not wood, it does not behave like anything else. It shatters when it is cold, it warps when it is warm. It must be heated very carefully before it can be carved. And even then, one wrong cut, one slip of the chisel, and a panel that took weeks to shape fractures into dust. Listen to the workshop. The careful tapping of a small mallet, the soft hiss of amber shavings falling to the floor, the smell of pine resin, ancient, warm, sweet, rising from every surface. These men spend years here. They carve 100,000 individual pieces. Each is shaped, smoothed, fitted to its neighbor with jeweler's precision. They back the translucent panels with gold leaf, so the light passes through the stone and glows from within rather than merely reflecting from the surface. The room uses more than 6 tons of amber. The panels stretch to cover 55 square meters of wall. When it's finished, it is unlike anything built before or since. There is no comparison, there is no precedent, but it does not stay in Prussia. 1716. Peter the Great of Russia arrives in Berlin. He is a man of enormous appetites. He sees the room, he wants the room. The Prussian king, Frederick William I, sees an opportunity. He needs an ally against Sweden. A deal is negotiated, and it is one of the stranger exchanges in diplomatic history. The King of Prussia gives the Tsar of all Russia the greatest decorative chamber on earth. In return, the Tsar sends him 55 very tall soldiers for his personal guard regiment. The amber room is carefully dismantled, packed into 18 large wooden crates, loaded onto horse-drawn sleds, and in the brutal cold of a Russian winter, it begins its journey east. It arrives in St. Petersburg. It is reassembled in the Winter Palace. Then, decades later, Tsarina Elizabeth, Peer daughter, a woman of extraordinary taste and fiercer ambition, decides the room must be greater. She moves it to the Catherine Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, the royal summer residence outside the capital. She brings in the Italian architect Bartolomeo Rastrelli. He extends it. He adds mosaics of Florentine stone, jasper, agate, quartz. He adds gilded candelabras. He adds floor-to-ceiling mirrors so the amber reflects back at itself endlessly. The expanded room covers more than 100 square meters. It requires 2,000 candles to light properly. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine standing inside it when they are all lit. The walls are not solid, they move. The amber, lemon and saffron near the ceiling, deepening through cognac and cedar and dark cherry toward the floor, shifts as the candle flames shift. The mirrors catch the light and throw it back, multiplied. You are surrounded on every side by warm fire that does not burn, and beneath the smell of hot wax, something else, something older. The faint dry sweetness of prehistoric pine resin, waking up after 40 million years of sleep, a perfume from before human memory. This is the eighth wonder of the world. This is the crown jewel of the Russian Empire, a declaration of dynasty, of wealth, of permanence. It rests in its gilded hall for 2 centuries, and the dark, slowly, quietly, gathers at the edges of history. June 1941. 3 million German soldiers crossed the Soviet border in the largest land invasion in human history, Operation Barbarossa. Within weeks, Army Group North is advancing toward Leningrad. The town of Pushkin, home to the Catherine Palace, is directly in their path. Inside the palace, the curators understand what is coming. They have perhaps 2 weeks, maybe less. They begin to move the most portable treasures. Paintings are unhooked from walls and rolled into canvas tubes. Sculptures are wrapped in cloth and lowered into crates. The massive chandeliers are carefully disassembled, piece by piece. And then someone turns to the amber room and says the words everyone has been dreading. We cannot move it. The amber has been fixed to the walls for 2 centuries. The resin has dried. The panels are no longer flexible. They are fragile as old glass. When the curators try to pry a single test section from the wall, it crumbles into amber dust in their hands. There is no way to dismantle and transport the room in the time they have. A desperate plan is formed. They cover the glowing panels in thin layers of gauze. They paste grey wallpaper over the gauze. They try to make the most spectacular room in the world look like a forgotten storage corridor. The Germans arrive on September the 17th, 1941. They walk through the palace, their boots on the marble floor, the crystal chandeliers gone, the walls stripped bare, and then a room at the end of a corridor, papered over, unremarkable. One of the soldiers stops. The wallpaper is slightly warm to the touch. He tears a strip away. A faint golden glow beneath, he calls the others, 2 German art experts, both members of the official Nazi cultural looting unit known as the Kunstschutz, take command of the room. They work quickly, methodically, with the efficiency of men who have done this before. Under their direction, German soldiers strip the panels from the walls. What took master craftsmen years to construct is dismantled in 36 hours. Amber chips fall to the floor and are left there. The carved mosaics are levered from their settings. The gilded candelabras are packed separately. 27 large wooden crates are filled, sealed, and loaded onto a military train. The train moves west. The destination is Königsberg Castle, a massive, fortified complex in East Prussia on the Baltic Sea, the administrative seat of Erich Koch, Gauleiter, absolute ruler of the occupied territories, a man described even by his own superiors as pathologically brutal. Koch orders the room reassembled in the castle museum. 3rd floor. He wants it displayed, he wants it admired. He wants perhaps to own the most beautiful thing Russia ever made. For 2 years it sits there. Senior Nazi officers are brought to see it. They walk through it the way one walks through a cathedral. The museum director, Alfred Rode, becomes its devoted and obsessive custodian. He documents it, he photographs it, he appears to genuinely love it, in the way only a man who knows he has no right to a thing can love it. Then the war turns. The summer of 1944. The RAF launches 2 massive bombing raids on Königsberg. Incendiary bombs, the city burns for days, the castle roof collapses, the 3rd floor is heavily damaged. Alfred Rode writes in his diary that the room survived, that the panels were moved to the castle cellars before the bombs fell. This is the last written record anyone can verify. 6 months later, the Red Army encircles what is left of the city. The artillery begins in January. By April 9th, 1945, Königsberg falls. Soviet soldiers enter the ruins of the castle. They move through the smashed corridors, looking for what is theirs. They find the cellars. They search them. The room is gone. gone. And from this moment, the theories begin. Theory 1. The fire, the simplest answer. The room never left the castle. The incendiary bombs found the third floor, and amber burns. Not slowly, not quietly, but fast and total, like the resin it once was. Some historians, including German expert Karl-Heinz Quade, argue that the room was destroyed in the bombing, and that the search since has been chasing ash. Alfred Roday's diary entry claiming the panels survived. The first bombing is the only counter-evidence, but Rode died of typhus in December 1945, before Soviet investigators could question him. His wife died 2 weeks later. The diary itself has never been independently verified. Theory 2. The Dark Water. In the final months of the war, the German Navy launched Operation Hannibal, the largest maritime evacuation in history. More than 1 million soldiers and civilians were loaded onto ships in the frozen Baltic ports and moved west, away from the advancing Soviets. There are eyewitness accounts, multiple sources, dock workers and soldiers who claim they saw heavy guarded crates loaded under armed escort onto 2 specific vessels. The first is the Wilhelm Gustloff, a massive passenger liner repurposed as a refugee ship. On January 30th, 1945, a Soviet submarine commanded by Captain Alexander Marinsko fires 3 torpedoes. The Gustloff sinks in less than an hour. More than 9,000 people die, the greatest maritime death toll in history. The wreck lies today in 250 feet of water off the Polish coast. The second ship is the freighter Karlsruhe. It leaves Königsberg harbor in early April 1945. Soviet aircraft find it. They bomb it. The Karlsruhe sinks off the coast of Hella Peninsula in roughly 300 feet of water. Both wrecks have been found. Neither has been fully excavated. Theory 3. The Deep Earth. Erich Koch had months of warning before Königsberg fell. He had resources, transport networks, and access to a classified Nazi infrastructure project that most people have never heard of, Project Riese. Translated, Project Giant. Riese was a network of massive underground tunnels and bunkers carved into the Owl Mountains of what is now southern Poland. Begun in 1943 using slave labor from the Gross-Rosen concentration camp. The tunnels extend for miles beneath the mountains. Their exact purpose remains classified to this day. Some chambers were used as factories. Others appear to have been storage facilities for stolen valuables. A decoded German radio message, intercepted by Allied intelligence in January 1945, reads, "Action complete. Object stored in BSWE." The abbreviation has never been definitively deciphered. Some analysts believe it refers to a mine shaft near Göttingen in central Germany, the Wittekind-Vollpriausen salt mine, a dry, sealed, climate-stable underground chamber. The crates, in this version of events, are buried under rock, under concrete, in the dark, waiting for someone who never came back for them. Theory 4. The deliberate destruction. This theory is not often discussed, but it exists. By 1945, certain senior Nazi officials understood the war was lost. They understood what would follow. Some historians believe the Amber Room was deliberately destroyed, burned, buried beyond recovery, or broken into untraceable fragments, not to hide it from the Russians, but to ensure it could never be used as evidence of looting, to ensure it could never be returned. If true, the room was not stolen, it was murdered. The war ends. The Soviets take control of Königsberg, rename it Kaliningrad, and seal it from the outside world for decades. Foreigners are not permitted inside the city limits until 1991. This is where the trail does something unexpected. It goes quiet, deliberately quiet. The Soviets know what was taken from the Catherine Palace. They have a complete inventory. They have witnesses. They have Alfred Rhodes' documents. Within months of the city falling, Soviet investigation teams are on the ground in Kaliningrad, searching the ruins of the castle and the cellars beneath it. They find nothing. Then something remarkable happens. The investigation files are sealed, classified. The Soviet government publicly maintains that the Amber Room was destroyed in the Königsberg bombing. Case closed, nothing to find. But the classified files tell a different story. In 1992, following the collapse of the Soviet Union, a portion of the KGB archives relating to the Amber Room search is declassified. researchers find evidence that the Soviets conducted a secret, sustained investigation that ran from 1945 until at least 1987. The investigation had a code name, Operation Pushkin. Operation Pushkin employed dozens of agents across East and West Germany. They dug up fields, they drained ponds, they blasted open sealed mine shafts in the Harz Mountains. They intercepted correspondence between suspected art dealers. They placed informants inside the community of Nazi veterans and their families. They found looted paintings, stolen gold, crates of valuables that had simply been forgotten in the chaos of defeat. They did not find the amber. Why did the Soviets keep the investigation secret while publicly claiming the room was destroyed? Two possibilities. The first, they genuinely believed the room survived and were protecting their search from interference. The second, and this is the possibility that serious historians do not dismiss, the Soviets had information they could not make public without revealing the extent of their own wartime looting of German cultural property. The repatriation of stolen art was, in the 1950s and 60s, a deeply political act. If the Soviets acknowledged the Amber Room might exist, they opened themselves to reciprocal claims. Thousands of items taken from Germany by the Red Army were sitting in Soviet museum vaults, and some of them were still there. The Amber Room, in this reading, became a secret, kept not to protect a treasure, but to protect a policy. The obsession does not respect borders, it does not respect nations. It consumes private citizens with the same ferocity it consumed governments. Consider Georg Stein, a German agronomist by training, a treasure hunter by vocation. From the 1960s onward, Stein dedicates his retirement, his savings, and eventually his sanity to finding the amber panels. He travels across Germany, Poland, and Russia. He sits in archives, he interviews aging veterans, he chases a lead to a sealed mine shaft in Thuringia. He chases another to a lake in Bavaria. He spends money he does not have. He loses friends who can no longer follow him down the corridors of this obsession. In October 1987, Georg Stein is found dead in a forest outside Munich. He is naked. There is a scalpel wound in his abdomen. The police rule it suicide. His files, years of research, source names, leads, theories, were missing from his house. They were never recovered. Others are luckier, or perhaps unluckier, in the specific way that people who find a single piece of an infinite puzzle are unlucky. 1997. An anonymous tip reaches a group of art crime investigators in Bremen, Germany. A man is attempting to sell an unusual piece of art, a Florentine mosaic, stone inlay work depicting the allegorical figures of touch and smell. One of the 4 decorative mosaics that were part of the original Amber Room. The police move quickly. They identify the seller. They raid his home. They seize the mosaic. The man is cooperative. His story is simple. His father was a German soldier stationed in Königsberg in the final months of the war. His father brought the mosaic home. His father told no one where the rest was. His father died in 1974. The trail collapses into a single point and disappears. One mosaic. One piece. Out of an object that once covered 100 square meters of wall, it is now in the Catherine Palace, behind glass, alone. Back in Russia, the decision has already been made to stop waiting for the original. The Reconstruction begins in 1979. It is led by master craftsman Alexander Kudrynsky. The challenge is nearly impossible. The techniques used by the original craftsmen were never written down. The tools they used are obsolete. The specific amber dyeing methods, how they achieved those precise shades of cognac and cherry and dark honey, are lost. The team has 86 black and white photographs to work from. They spend years relearning the craft from first principles. They train new craftsmen. They source Baltic amber. They experiment with dyes. They break panels. They start again. The project takes 24 years. It costs over $11 million, much of it donated by the German energy company Ruhrgas as a gesture of post-war reconciliation. In May 2003, Vladimir Putin and Gerhard Schroeder stand together in the Catherine Palace and formally open the reconstructed Amber Room. It is extraordinary. It is perfect. The craftsmen have achieved something miraculous. A replica is an admission of grief. It is a monument to something lost. And the people who built it know this better than anyone. But the search does not end with the reconstruction. If anything, the completed replica clarifies something important. The original is still out there, or it was, and someone, somewhere, knows more than they have said. Today, the hunt continues in two places simultaneously. In the Baltic Sea, off the coast of Poland, a specialist diving team called Baltic Tech descends to the wreck of the Karlsruhe. The water temperature at 300 feet is 6 degrees Celsius. Visibility is measured in feet. The team uses rebreather equipment to extend their time at depth. They carry lights into the crushed hull and move carefully through compartments that have not been entered since 1945. They find things, military vehicles, still in their transport chains, crates of porcelain, a sealed wooden chest resting in the silt, its contents unknown because the wood is too fragile to disturb. They photograph everything. They leave everything in place. They ascend. On land, in the Kashubia region of northern Poland, a team led by retired Marine officer Jan Delingowski walks a stretch of forest outside the town of Mamerki. They are following a story told by Eric Koch himself in a Polish prison in the late 1980s, weeks before his death. Koch did not give a map. He gave only fragments, hints. The name of a location, the depth of a chamber, the number of crates. The Delingowski team brings ground-penetrating radar. They walk the site in a grid pattern, scanning the earth below their feet. The radar sends pulses down through the soil and measures the echo. On one pass, the screen lights up, a large anomaly, a space where no space should be. Hollow, deep, rectangular. They stop. They look at each other. They apply for permits. The permits take 2 years. They bring in drilling equipment. The drill bites into the earth. The earth resists. Before you drift into sleep, a word on sources. Much of what surrounds the Amber Room is legend. Rumor built on rumor, passed through 60 years of Cold War silence. But the core record is documented. For the history of the room's construction and the science of Baltic amber, the most reliable starting point is the research of the Gemological Institute of America, and specifically the work published by analyst Russell Shaw on amber composition and provenance authentication. For the theft and the Cold War political context of the search, the definitive text remains The Amber Room by investigative journalists Catherine Scott Clark and Adrian Levy, published in 2004, the most rigorous reconstruction of the paper trail currently in print. Now, a myth that needs correcting. You will have heard, perhaps, that the Amber Room carries a curse, that those who search for it die violently. Georg Stein's death in the Bavarian forest is cited most often. Sometimes the list is extended to include Alfred Rohde, who died of typhus in Königsberg in 1945. The record does not support this. Rohde died during a typhus epidemic that killed thousands in a destroyed city in winter. Georg Stein died after decades of financial ruin, social isolation, and the particular madness that comes from devoting a life to a search that offers no resolution. His death was the result of human despair, not supernatural intervention. The true curse of the Amber Room is not mystical, it is psychological. It is the way a missing thing, beautiful, irreplaceable, unjustly taken, rewrites the people who go looking for it. The obsession is the curse. I will leave you with one question, a question that the documentary record cannot answer. If, as some curators and officials later claimed, the Amber Room was completely destroyed by the RAF bombing in August of 1944, why did the Nazi High Command issue classified, high priority orders in January of 1945 to transport heavy sealed crates from the Königsberg castle cellars to an unknown location? Those orders exist. They are in the archive. The crates were transported. By whom, to where, under whose authority, the record ends. We do not know what was in the crates. We do not know where the train stopped. We do not know what rests in the silt at 300 feet, or behind the concrete walls in a Polish forest, or at the bottom of a salt mine whose entrance was sealed in the last days of a collapsing war. The puzzle is missing its final piece. The room is missing. The darkness has kept its secrets for 80 years.